Hello everyone and welcome to another video where today we're going to be talking about something I haven't really gotten into until now, and for good reason. And that is mushrooms. As my criteria for a wild edibles episode is that I've had to have eaten a specific wild edible either beforehand or during the video in order for me to feel comfortable telling you that it's edible. As such, this is not a wild edibles episode. Now, considering much of what I do on the channel is wild edibles related, you might think it's strange that I'm not really that into mushroom foraging. One of the main reasons is just a simple issue of availability. The forests that I'm familiar with, which is oak hickory and associated woodlands, are not really all that good for choice edible mushrooms. However, I'm sure choice edible mushrooms are present, as I'm currently pointing the camera at one that I can't quite 100% identify as edible, but based on the limited research I've done, it does look to be non-toxic, at the very least. But that all said, that bleeds into the second issue of familiarity. The issue is I never really learned these. From a very young age, I've been familiar with edible plants, but edible fungi, not at all. I'm sure a lot of this has to do with the fact that my dad and mentor is a doctor, and I'm sure his view is clouded by the fact that he tends to see and hear about the guys who got it wrong. I have seen several comments on other videos about mushroom foraging where people talk about how it was a part of their childhood that they would go out mushroom foraging and that it wasn't that dangerous. Well, yeah, because you learned from your parents, and that sort of passing down and mentoring is the best way to learn wild edibles. That said, no matter how you learn these things, mistakes do happen, and that goes into the third reason why I've never really gotten into mushrooms. And that's the fact that these most certainly can kill you. Not that plants can't, but a lot of the edible mushrooms look very much like the ones that are not. Doing all this wild edible stuff, I've sort of learned that you really can't just rely on positively identifying something as an edible species. It's not enough to just look at this and say, well, it has a cap like a portobello, its gills are black like a portobello, and it has a white stem like a portobello, so therefore this is a portobello or other edible species. No. That's not enough. The fact of the matter is you need to know what's out there, and you need to be able to identify both the poisonous species and the edible ones. Simply setting out a checklist of black gills, brown cap, white stem is, honestly, it's just not enough. Because there are so many different things that might be able to fit those specific criterias that you could get it wrong. It's incredibly rare to have two things that are so similar that you can't tell them apart in any way, shape, or form, but if you're not familiar with what each one looks like, you could foreseeably mistake one for the other. All that said, that's not to say there's no reason to learn, especially in terms of survival. Food can be hard to come by in a climax forest floor, and mushrooms are one of the few things that you can eat in those environments. All that said, however, I'm pointing my camera at this specific mushroom for a very important reason. And that's the fact that, well, as much as this looks like a store-bought portobello, I do not think this is the place to start. The safest way to learn wild edibles is to build up your knowledge over years and years, and ideally to start from places that aren't likely to cause you any significant risk if you get it wrong. If I were to eventually get into mushroom foraging, I would start with things like, well, they say the Fearless Four, oyster mushrooms, giant puffballs, that sort of thing. Cap mushrooms like these always run the risk that they might be amanitas or some other mushroom that could make you very, very sick. Anyway, that's all for now. I'll be leaving this mushroom for any other animals to enjoy if they think that they can identify it better than I can. And that being said, if you think you know what this mushroom is, please tell me in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. Well, I hope you guys learned something and enjoyed. See ya.